So, ladies and gentlemen, this interview is brought to you by Burn Up Coaching and the 21-Day Challenge. If you're an entrepreneur or a high achiever, someone who's committed to having an amazing life, being your greatest possible self, but you've plateaued, you feel like you're spinning your wheels, you feel like you're vaguely dissatisfied, unhappy, things aren't working exactly how you want them to, you want to reignite. You want to kick up your self-belief, your passion, and your execution to achieve your goal. Then the 21-Day Challenge might be the perfect thing to reignite yourself. What it looks like is over 21 days, you will get daily accountability, daily check-ins, and support to make sure that you're on track to achieve that 21-day challenge. The 21-day goal, you'll get clear on that, crystal clear on that. What are the actions that you need to take? Why is it important to you? Making sure you're going after the right target rather than the wrong target. And we'll have weekly deep dive calls to make sure that we're diving into the subconscious mind and making sure that you're empowered and free from old limiting beliefs, past stories, past programming, all that nonsense. So we'll do that. And then in addition to that, you'll dial in your daily routines, your daily habits to make sure that you have a foundation of success to succeed and then propel yourself to even more success after those 21 days. So if that sounds like a great fit for you, send me a message. Let me know that you're interested in the 21-day challenge, and we'll see if it's a good fit for you, because it is definitely not for everyone. It is incredibly intense and only for people who want to achieve a big goal in 21 days. So if that's for you, send me a message and we'll see if it's a good fit. The next thing is the iTunes review of the week. So with iTunes, we collect reviews and we read the reviews. And Yogi Boo said, genuine and transformational. Chris has a gift for asking the right questions and a style that motivates and makes me feel great. He is living into his work and sharing it in a meaningful way that will inspire you to take big leaps. I highly recommend it. So Yogi Boo, thank you so much for the review. I appreciate you. Thank you. And for anyone else who wants to leave a review or share that feedback with us, we always appreciate that. You can go to beyourgps.com/iTunes and do that there, or you can also do it by searching Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self on iTunes or on Facebook and find it there. So thank you in advance for doing that, and we appreciate you for doing that. Next, the man of the hour, Nick Loffree, is a mindful movement and self-healing coach. He helps people access optimal health, more energy, and better relationships through his videos, coaching, classes, and events. He specializes in bioenergetic movement practices, including Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, and meditation. Nick began his journey as a healer at age 17 when he discovered latent psychic and empathic abilities. At first diagnosed with psychosis, Nick quickly found the health of his mind and body deteriorating under the influence of psychiatric medications. He switched gears and took control of his own healing process, using years of dietary experiments to clear the medication's side effects and taking a deep dive into esoteric healing practices to face, integrate, and transcend his psychic imbalances. Through these trials, Nick found hidden secrets of life, health, mind, energy, and spirit that he shares with the world in the most fun and pragmatic ways possible. Nick, are you ready to rock the house, brother?
All right, after one more sip of tea.
Perfect timing. Love it.
Could always use another cup of tea.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on today and being here to share with our audience about Bionic Qigong and everything that you got going on, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into the theme of the day, which today is 0 to 60 real fast. So, Nick, have you ever really been called to do things very, very quickly, or do you feel like everything needs to take its time? How do you achieve results quickly, and is that something that's important to you?
Yeah, it's all situational. Everybody wants to get where they're going as fast as they can, and one of the things that Qigong teaches is the ability to slow down and to be patient and to receive. And sometimes, I definitely notice on my own healing journey that the closer I brought the date of how quickly I wanted to be able to heal whatever issue, the more stress I created for myself, and actually the less I lined myself up for really good results.
Wow.
So I think sometimes for like really deep healing processes and stuff, it's a long process. It takes time. You have to be willing to put in. like a sustainable effort over a long period of time, and be willing to experiment and try different things. So yeah, I guess it depends what you're looking at.
Beautiful. I agree. I think it is definitely situational, and I love how when you focused on getting it done quickly, there was like pressure and stress, which didn't have the optimal alignment for the completion of whatever it was that you're working on. And when you have that patience and knowingness that everything is going to get done and done on time, exactly when it's supposed to, then things like fall in place perfectly and turn out perfectly when we're not like worried unnecessarily. So I love that, man. And let's dive more into Bionic Qigong and what that is. Tell us more about what you're working on today.
Yeah, so I teach mainly Qigong. I teach a lot of yoga and things like that too. But basically, I'm trying to take Qigong, which is a practice that's very useful, very healing, very pragmatic. People can fit it in their days really easy and do it in any kind of clothing and things like that. So it's a very powerful and easy to use healing practice, but I'm basically trying to market it and present it and kind of repackage it in a way that normal people actually want to do. So the term bionic in front of the Qigong is basically a signal that like we're modernizing it, right? Because Qigong, it's all about bioenergy. It's about like life force energy. So a bionic human, the bionic man, bionic woman is like mixing electricity and electronics into like organic organisms.
I love it. I love it.
So the Qigong is kind of like that. You're bringing in your life electricity. But I'm really trying to modernize it by, not feeling like I have to stick to just Qigong. Like I mix in calisthenics and power yoga and things that bring a more like fitness element to the people who need that sort of flavor. And then more like gentle things for people who are kind of more in need of just a really deep healing practice. So I try to get it really flexible for people's needs.
Awesome. I love it. I love the bionic, how it's like keeping up with today's modern day and age. It's a what's it like? It's like a different face, so to speak, on the same framework and same classic techniques and mindset around it that makes it work, right? I think that it's cool because we can evolve practices while making sure to stay true to the roots that cause the effective, the effectiveness of the practices and of the modalities of the teachings.
Yeah, that and Bionic has the word Nick in it, so
heck yeah.
Bionic Qigong.
Bionic Qigong. Yeah. I love it.
There's a lot of funny old like superstitious stuff wrapped up in Qigong. Like some schools will say, put left hand over right hand for if you're a man and right hand over left if you're a woman, and then you'll go to the other school and it says the exact opposite thing, and they have a whole bunch of things like that, and it's like probably none of that's really true.
Right.
Feeling like where's like the reality here.
I love it, man. So let's dive back into the journey a little bit, because we get that you're working on Qigong now and meditation and yoga, all kinds of cool stuff like that. And with the Qigong, how did you get into that? What was the journey like? You mentioned, I mentioned a psychic awakening that happened. Tell us about that, and what were some of the challenges that you went through, and what wisdom did you get through that process?
Yeah, well, the Qigong I got into by accident. I injured myself through yoga, and then I just needed something else to do where I could move without injuring myself worse. And I just kind of stumbled on Qigong, and that really fit the bill. And then turned out to have this whole depth of other things that was like, whoa, like how are the yogis not doing this? Like, I still can't believe every time I go, most yoga studios I look at, like they've never heard of Qigong. It's amazing stuff. But I just kind of kept having this series of like doing a practice and then it's having certain benefits and then screwing me up in a different way. So it was like yoga screwed up all my tendons. I wouldn't say yoga screwed it up, but my over ambition in my yoga practice.
Yes.
And before that, it was meditation. And I just got all sorts of back pain and neck pain, just sitting there for hours every day, trying to, get into the mind. That's kind of what got me into yoga. But before that, it was psychedelics. As a teenager, I kind of got into them by accident. as a spiritual path, sort of, things like psilocybin and LSD and things like that. And there's a lot of stigma around those things, and there's a lot of good research these days. And I think, the people I respect most talking about psychedelics are the people who can say, there's a lot of potent, positive effects that can be gained from them, and there's also a lot of dangers. And I kind of experienced both. So as an adolescent, I was using the psychedelics, and I'd actually stumbled across Buddhist philosophy at the time too. So I was like, reading Alan Watts and things like that. And it was actually through The Simpsons, as Lisa Simpson becomes a Buddhist.
Wow.
I was watching that episode when I was 15, and her mom gets her this tree. She called it a Bodhi tree for her to meditate under at the end of the episode. And none of it fazed me the whole time until I saw the tree. I was like, oh my God, I just have to have that tree. I don't know why. And so I went online and I'm trying to find this tree, and I can't find where to buy a Buddha tree or anything. But I find the story of the Buddha and the Buddhist philosophy, and I'm like, oh, this thing's so cool. So I'm reading Buddhist philosophy and then doing psychedelic drugs, and all the things that they're talking about, the states of consciousness that they're talking about in the Buddhist philosophy, the dissolving of a sense of self, the sort of merging with the larger self of the universe and things like that. I was experiencing through these psychedelic experiences. So it was very mind expanding, and I had a lot of deconditioning cultural wise, and healing experiences, and really beautiful stuff was happening. And then I had this really odd trip where I think it was me and two other friends were on LSD, and we learned to use telepathy. And we had we literally sat there for 3 hours without saying a word. And we're just sending images and sounds and music and stories and stuff to each other. And it all kind of started, I was sitting there, and the LSD is starting to kick in, and I look at my skin, and I start to hallucinate that my skin is glowing with gold light. And I'm like, whoa, that's really cool. And I felt like this Egyptian god or something, like I was made of gold or something. And then I just had this will. I was like, well, I'd like my friends to see how holy and divine and powerful I am. And as soon as I had that will, the gold light, it shot out of my body and bounced off the walls of the room. And I'm seeing this, and I'm like, okay, I must be hallucinating this. But then my friends are seeing it.
What?
Like, whoa. And they're like, how the hell did you do that? And we just started experimenting from there. And
Wow.
it was just amazing. You could send this story I'm telling you now. It might take me another 2 or 3 minutes to tell, but in that state, we could send that much information in 3 seconds.
Wow.
Just with images, archetype, because archetypes are kind of like information compressors. The archetype father, that's a lot of information, and you can sum it up with just father, right?
Wow.
You can tell a lot of stories like that. It was very, very interesting. So I came out of that, and I don't know, we went to bed and we woke up the next day, and we kind of exchanged info. That wasn't just me tripping, right? You guys saw that stuff too, and we're like, yes. And so we had a little validation there. And for them, things just kind of went back to normal. And for me, I kind of, as I'm trying to ease back into my life, it was now I had all these questions, okay, well, how much, what are the boundaries on the mind, and what are the possibilities? And at first I thought it was really cool. I'm like, oh, maybe now I can be psychic anytime I want, and I can use it to get chicks or something. And so I was kind of trying to use it in everyday life. And then eventually at some point, I think we were just high on cannabis in the woods one day. And I think there was some deer off, we saw some deer in the woods, and now I'm really stoned. And sometimes when you get high on marijuana after using a psychedelic, it kind of brings back some of that psychedelic experience. And so it's a little bit like I'm on LSD, even though I'm just on marijuana. But I see the deer, and I'm like, I wonder if I can talk to the deer. I'm trying to, and I can't really tell if it's happening or not, because the deer can't really give much feedback. You can't be like, what number am I thinking of? But and then it just suddenly occurred to me, wait, as I'm sending these thoughts out to these deer, can those thoughts get to my friends who are between me and the deer? Are they gonna pass through their heads on the way? And then I'm like, well, wait, what if I opened up this ability to send these thoughts and I couldn't close it? And now just everything. Maybe everybody's hearing this thought process. Maybe all these people are hearing this, and they're just kind of awkwardly trying not to make eye contact with me, you know? And then, you know, marijuana gets people like pretty paranoid, you know, when you smoke enough of it. You start getting all these weird things like that. People think, I used to think like, I'd feel my heart beating and I'd be like, is this a heart attack? And I'd try and get all my friends to call an ambulance. Right? And so I just started tripping on that. I'm like, whoa, like, is it voluntary? Is it involuntary? Like, can you control that once you open that door? And then eventually the marijuana wore off and that trip kind of went away. And that paranoia just started kind of finding its way into my life. Wow. And then I actually started trying to fix it using drugs. I'm like, well, maybe I just got to do like another mushroom trip and I can go in and like rewire my brain to close that door or whatever. But it just kept getting worse. But what was interesting was, you know, aside from just the paranoid thinking, sorry, my cat's hurting my computer here. Aside from the paranoid thinking, there was also this like kind of tangible sensation of the boundaries of the mind dissolving, and this sensation of like I really felt this sense like you know, in The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, the Eye of Sauron, and everywhere it looks, it kind of like sends this spotlight, like this beam of light, so you can kind of see where it's looking. Right. I kind of had like a felt sense of that from other people. Like I felt like I could, like, you know, when you're like, I know someone's looking at me, like I can feel somebody's looking at me. Like I could feel that with like people's awareness, or at least I thought I could. So there was like feeling based things too, and intuition based things, and kind of like started like it felt like I could intuit what other people were feeling. And it really felt like there was this energy in the space between me and other people. And I could even kind of see it as like, almost like static on your television. And then I could feel that going out and out and out into space. And these are all things that through Qigong, you actually learn to work with that energy and do something with it. So that part of it, I think actually might've had some reality to it. But basically, eventually I couldn't go to school anymore. So I wound up at a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist is just instantly like, oh, you have drug-induced psychosis. We just got to get you on these pills right away. And I'm like, oh, thank God, because I don't want any of this shit to be real. This is really fucking freaking weird. So I, take the pills, and then they had me sign some like suicide watch forms where they're like, have you ever thought of killing yourself? And I'm like, well, yeah, like I thought about it. And they're like, well, how would you do it? And I'm like, well, jumping off a bridge seems pretty painless, so I think I'd do that, right? And then they're like, well, which bridge? The tall one near my house. And they're like, all right, he's gonna kill himself, we can lock him up in a mental hospital. And I'm like, you guys could have asked. I would have loved to go to a mental hospital. But the odd thing through this whole process was I kept being treated like I was incapable of like rational thinking, which I was, but I had experienced a realm of possibility that was so outside of what was rationally talked about in our society and in our medicine and stuff. And so like I was thinking rationally about it, but I had no empirical data to go off of to formulate my beliefs around. So I'm just going, I don't know what's possible. Like, so as I meet these psychiatrists, I keep trying to get them to like, just do experiments with me. I'm like, how about I just write a number down or draw a shape, and I'll just try to send it to you, and you just try to guess it. And if you can't guess it, then maybe I just send it. So I can check that off my list. That's not a real thing I can do, But they're all just kind of like, I think they might have had some legal stipulation that they couldn't like play this game where you like indulge the patient's delusional fantasy. Like you can't, like if they think they're Jesus, like it's not an acceptable therapy to pretend that they're Jesus with them and try to like manipulate them back into the world. Right. You have to like just be like, no, you're not Jesus or something. Right. So I spent a couple of weeks at the youth mental hospital, and while I'm there, my mom was actually a yoga teacher, and she'd saw that I'd kind of taken an interest in Buddhism and things like this. So she bought me a book by the Dalai Lama. It was called How to Meditate. And before that, I'd just been reading the philosophy and then doing drugs to experience the philosophy. And then it's like, okay, here's the instructional manual. How do you actually do this the Buddhist way? Because obviously the drugs might be off the table for a little while. So I start like a regular meditation practice, and the first one I did was just listening to the sound of a river. So once I got out of the hospital, I'd go to this river near my parents' house and just try to do nothing with my mind except hear the sound of the river. And it was a brutally painful way to meditate because it wasn't relaxing at all. And I'm sitting on just uncomfortable rocks and my body is getting more and more sore. And it wasn't like I didn't know anything about controlling my breath or anything. So it wasn't like I was more relaxed at the end. It was just put my mind here. It wanders off, put it back on the river. It wanders off, put it back on the river. So it was just kind of this like focused thing. But I was just really committed. I had no idea what else to do. So I just kept doing that. And eventually I finally got my mind to only hear the sound of the river. And this took months and months. But finally, that's all I hear. Sound of the river, sound of the river, sound of the river, sound of the river. And my conscious mind like slowed down enough, or actually became still enough that there was no thought content in the mind. There was nothing like, oh, this is a river, and isn't that nice? And can't I hear the bubbles over there? And that reminds me of my friend Bubbles when I was a kid. There's none of that going on. Just shh.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So no thought content. And what I think, looking back, that allowed to happen was for the energy of the subconscious content to come to the surface, because there's a vacuum in the conscious mind. And just like all this like unconscious stuff came up, like the sort of the emotional fears and stuff I had that were sort of underlying some of the paranoia, like some insecurity and things like that, like, and it came up as an archetype, like we were saying before. It's like the information was compressed into like an image or like a mask. And when this mask first came up, it was just like all the things I hated about myself, was ashamed of, just came up like this is you. And I was like, holy shit. And then it just, and instantly the mask came off, and I could tell it was a mask, and I could see what was behind the mask. Wow. And just like see the beauty and the innocence and the worthiness that was like behind that this whole time. And that this was such a fiction. And I think I just like cried for like 20 minutes and just let snot fall in the river. But it was really amazing. But I never got that far with meditation again after that. I never had an experience like that again. I think because it was so uncomfortable when it happened, when that like demonic archetype like came up, that it was so hard to focus meditating after that. After it happened, because I always think every time the mind would start to be still, it'd be like, oh boy, here we go. And that would get me kind of thinking again, because I'd be thinking about this. So, and I was developing all this pain in my body anyways. So soon after that, I found my way into a yoga class, and I went into one that was way over my head. And the antipsychotic medication I'd be taking, I had a lot of physical side effects. So I gained about 70 pounds. Not the good kind, but I thought it was the good kind, because nobody in my family ever gains fat. Right. And so I just assumed it was muscle, and nobody was telling me that I was like looking chubby, because they wanted me to keep taking the meds. So they're just like, oh, you look great. Yeah, you're bulking up, dude.
Bulking up.
So the pills basically, they make you hungry all the time. So I'm just eating all this junk. I don't know anything about nutrition, so I'm just eating all this junk food and stuff all the time. So I put on a lot of weight, and I had acne and eczema all over my face and my head, and indigestion constantly. But so I find my way into this yoga class, and so I'm carrying like 70 extra pounds, and yoga is like a body weight like exercise form. So I get in there, and there's all these like 70-year-old ladies like going through all these poses, no sweat, and I'm like shaking through the whole thing. And so it was kind of embarrassing, but I felt really, really good at the end, and just like my body had been cleaned out, and some of the toxins that had been accumulating had been cleaned out. It felt so good. And I was like, man, I never feel good after I meditate. Like, this is so different. Wow. So I just got really hooked right away. And I think it was around that point that I started to figure out, like, if I did the yoga, I was so grounded after, and my mind was so clear. Everything felt so clean, and my body felt grounded and centered. And I just didn't have any symptoms of paranoia or any of those symptoms of kind of feeling overly connected energetically. So I started with the help of my psychiatrist, started weaning myself off the medication, and kind of just adopting more of a yoga lifestyle, which then led me to like, oh, maybe all these like Big Macs I'm eating are like part of why I have acne almost literally everywhere. Maybe 3 Big Macs a day isn't helping.
Yup. Wow.
So I started looking at my diet, and that led me down a whole rabbit hole, and I experimented, veganism and raw food diet and paleo, playing around with keto these days.
Nice.
Yeah. So.
Damn.
But again, so the yoga I wound up finally eventually doing a yoga teacher training. This stuff, it helped me so much, and how many people are out there, especially like young men who, yoga is so stigmatized as like, Lululemon suburban moms.
Yep.
Doing it to keep their butts toned, and how many like young guys with like mental illness and depression and things like could really use this stuff. So I did a yoga teacher training, a really amazing teacher. But it was me and like, one other dude, and then 25 just most beautiful women you've ever seen, like in a room for 20 days doing power yoga. And so I'm like pushing myself a little harder than I was at home with like the DVDs and stuff. And I just didn't want to be the guy like sitting out of that pose or not able to go to the full version of this pose. And so my ego got the better of me, and I could feel different muscles and ligaments, like tendons. Like there was areas where it felt like someone was like sawing my leg off, and I just kept holding the pose, like, like I don't know. It's probably just, stretching maybe is supposed to feel like that at some point.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Oh yeah.
So I came out of it, and I'm just like, man, every time I do yoga, like my body hurts like a lot now.
Oh my gosh.
I go to a physical therapist, and he's like playing with everything, and he's like, does this hurt? Does this hurt? And I'm like, it doesn't hurt. Like, I feel fine. And he's like, well, when do you hurt? And I'm like, well, when I do yoga. And he's like, well, have you considered not doing yoga? And I'm like, I just spent $3,000 in like a year of my life on this yoga teacher training. So I was like, man, I don't know what choice I have. But around that time, a martial arts teacher I was hanging around sent me this 7-minute Qigong YouTube video. There was this guy named Lee Holden, who wound up becoming my mentor. But it was just 7 minutes, and it was really work because it was in between meditation and yoga. So in yoga, it's really nice because you're moving. So most people have a hard time just sitting down and meditating and telling their mind to be quiet. Movement helps a lot. But the Qigong wasn't so focused on the stretching. Like there was a stretching aspect if you wanted it. You could go into really interesting and useful stretching. But for the most part, it was focused on basically fluid, slow movement linked with breath. It wasn't necessarily, it's not there to build muscle. It's not there to burn calories. It's not there to, turn you into a pretzel. Like the goal is like super straightforward. It's to heal your body, calm your mind, right? More health, calmer mind, balanced emotions. And after just 7 minutes of this stuff, I was like more relaxed than I'd ever been from any practice I'd ever done. I'd been going into all the weird, esoteric, energy-based yoga stuff and all the chanting and all this. And it might just be something with my nervous system, but 7 minutes of Qigong, I was like, man, I feel like when I was stoned and that actually used to be fun, like just that like total ease. And maybe I stimulated my endocannabinoid system, cannabinoid receptors in the body. But and I just like went to bed after that, and my body felt like it was made of cotton and clouds, and it was like the best sleep I'd ever had. And I think that was when I had this wart that had been on my foot for like 4 years, and I'd done like all the Western, they'd cut it off, they'd frozen it, I'd done the duct tape, all the creams, it just kept coming back. And that night I just had this sense of the energy in my body, and I just like, what if I like sent that to the wart? And I just kept like imagining this like white light that I felt in my body. Just I'd breathe it down to my foot, so my foot started really buzzing. And then I woke up the next day, and not only was the wart gone, and it was huge, it was like this big old gnarly thing, like it was like half an inch deep into the sole of my foot, and inch or so across. It had just gotten really bad. But not only was it gone, but there wasn't like a hole where it was left. It was just like perfect skin on
What?
the sole of my foot. And I was like, how is that even possible? I had this gnarly wart like yesterday.
Wow.
And I was so I just got hooked on the Qigong right away. And this is like right after my yoga teacher training.
Hmm.
And I actually had some classes set up that I was supposed to be teaching yoga to.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I'm not sure if I can like demonstrate the yoga without injuring myself more. So maybe I can do this Qigong thing. So I just like, who was that guy who had the video? And I went to I think my mom actually got me as a gift. His like course. He had a box with like 6 DVDs and 6 CDs and lectures and a book. And so I just went through and like memorized the whole like system. And I just started teaching that in these yoga classes and kind of just calling it like Chinese yoga or something. Yeah. Essentially it is. But and the people in the classes loved it. I was fortunate. It was kind of an older audience, and older folks tend to really love Qigong because it's very gentle and very good for the joints and arthritis and stiffness and things like that. Not making you go upside down and stuff. So they loved it, and so I started making a little money doing it. And then eventually I was like, man, maybe I should go do this guy's like formal teacher training. So I took myself. All of this happened in Toronto, Canada, which is where I grew up. And the teacher who had been in that initial YouTube video, his name was Lee Holden, and he was based in Santa Cruz, California, which is this hidden little beach town that most people don't know about it. I'm not sure anybody here would want me to tell the world about it right now, but this is amazing little surf town right on the edge of Silicon Valley. I think they call it Silicon Beach now because all the computer programmers are moving here and jacking up all the prices. But so I came here just to do his 2-week teacher training, and this is in 2014. And I saw Santa Cruz, and I saw the palm trees and the surf and the redwood forest. And I was like, man, this place is so cool. I wonder if it's possible to move here. Like, is that even possible? And my mom was born and raised in Ohio, and she moved to Canada to marry my dad. But it never occurred to me that like I just could get American citizenship. So I called immigration, and I'm like, my mom's American. Like, can I get a work visa easier or something? And they're just like, why don't you just come get your passport? Like, you're being American, you should have been, drafted into a war or something a decade ago. How didn't we find you? So I basically just went home and I got all my stuff and I came down here and I had no plans. I didn't know anybody except, this like famous Qigong teacher who I figured didn't want anything to do with me because it was too big. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I got here, I went and took a class at his studio and I found out his office manager was leaving. He runs an acupuncture clinic too. And I was just like, hey, I heard you need a new office manager. And he's like, you're 25 and you probably understand like Facebook and stuff that most people have had work for me don't get. And I was like, yeah, I could, probably figure it out. And so I just instantly got hired and got all these random jobs. I'd like to start doing social media for a while. And then I kind of taught myself film and I started making new DVDs for him. And then he started training me in like medical Qigong, which like you would like emit your Qi into patients and he's like various acupressure and massage and stuff. And so I started working in his clinic, and meanwhile I'm getting private training and taking all his workshops, and it was really amazing. It was one of those people that you always hope that behind the camera, like when they're not like on the DVD for yoga or whatever, that behind the scenes they're like also like a good person. And it was just the most amazing experience. He really like took me under his wing and helped me out a lot. And then I started subbing classes at his studio and then growing the classes out into Santa Cruz. And then I'm actually working on a product with him now called, we're going to call it Qi Fit, which is basically like mixing basically what I was talking about with the Bionic Qigong. But I'm kind of going to bring it more into his company where we're mixing more like athletic and fitness stuff for people who want to play around with meditation and energy medicine and stuff, but all like they don't have time to work out and do that. So you kind of mix it all up. So yeah. And I think, and since I met him, it really put the final touches on my healing process. Cause I've been kind of going through it blind. I didn't know anybody who specialized in what I'd been going through. And, basically he was able to like feel my energy field, and he's basically like helped me with Qigong exercises to actually fill up. This all sounds super woo-woo, and people watching who aren't into energy medicine and stuff, I'm sure it sounds woo-woo, but the hippies talk about like the aura and stuff, and Qigong, that's a real thing. You don't just see it or imagine it, but you actually feel it. So you can actually, once your hands are, the energy's lit up in your hands, you can bring them in, and you actually feel like your hands hit like a magnetic wall. And it's just like when you have two magnets and you put north and north together, and you push them together, and you feel that resistance, but there's nothing you can see between them, but you just feel it, right?
Right.
And that's a lot of what the sensation in Qigong is like, is you find these places where the Qi meets and you can kind of compress it.
Wow.
So he taught me all these exercises to fill that up, and like just like life-changing. The effect that had was like I could actually turn on and off whether I want to actually be able to tune into what this person's feeling or anything like that. I could fill that field up, or I could open it up, right? Just, it sounds super crazy, but yeah, I think, and I've met a few other people since I've done a few interviews like this, and a few people have contacted me who've had really similar things where like they've had psychosis, but they've also had a supernatural ability. So they've actually like, they've had these weird premonitions, and things they start predicting the future is one of them. And, but then they also start having all these weird fantasies, right? And all this kind of delusional thinking. But then within that delusion, they actually predict something real that actually happens.
Wow.
Right. And I've been wondering ever since I started on this journey, like how many people, open up some sort of psychic gift that then they don't have any tools to understand. So you just get into a lot of paranoia or do a delusion or something. There's no one you can really talk to about it. There's no experts on it. And everything I looked up, I stopped researching it like really fast, because everything I could find on the internet about psychic abilities wasn't like how to tell if you have them, or like how to reel them in if they're overwhelming. It was like how to get psychic powers, like how to,
awaken. Everybody wants it, but
everybody wants to get them. And
right.
But so many people, once they have them, and this, Lee, my Qigong teacher, has actually worked with several people like this. And one of them was actually an informant for the FBI.
Wow.
And she would actually be able to find like where the killer or whatever was.
Damn.
Using her abilities. But it was so exhausting for her, because she would go into the mind of that killer and the mind of the victim and feel everything they'd felt. And she'd be wiped out for a month every time she did it. So the FBI could only come to her for very few cases.
Damn.
So Lee started teaching her like very similar Qigong, like here's how to close that field so you can shut out that energy when time's right. But yeah.
Damn,
I keep thinking my long-term goal is to be like Professor Xavier.
Heck yeah.
Find people with mutant superpowers who, they're like blowing up their school with their laser eyes and stuff.
I love it, man. I love it. And like I was just saying to someone earlier today, everyone has superpowers. It's just like we can't be attached to what a superpower looks like or how it impacts the world and ourselves, Like, of course, we know the superpowers of shooting laser beams out of our eyes, flying, and telepathy. Those have been quote unquote superpowers.
Yeah.
But we also have superpowers of organized effort, of team building, of, mathematics, of science, of intuition, of all these different things. There's so many ways. Athleticism, right? Body stuff. Like, everyone has different superpowers. And totally. I believe it's our gift and our journey, our adventure to explore what those are in this lifetime. So this vision of, uniting people who have extraordinary gifts, who have unique gifts into one place so that they don't feel, because I think there's a lot of outcast feeling, like they feel like they don't belong, they feel like they are different, are freaks, whatever, right? Like I felt like I was alone growing up. I felt like people didn't get me, they didn't understand me.
Yeah.
And a lot of people feel like that, but I believe that's just like the human in a lot of ways a human condition, is to believe the BS in our minds that we're different than anyone else. So I am 100% in support of you creating more unity of people who feel like they're outcasts or freaks or have these superpowers and they don't know what to do with them. They feel overwhelmed by them. They feel like everyone in their normal life rejects them and doesn't believe them and doesn't understand them. So I'm 100% in support of that, man. I'm excited to see what you create with that.
Even just people with like extraordinary creativity, like creativity is amazing because you're going out of the field of the known and all the structures that we already have, and you're going into the complete like unstructured raw reality, right? Like the potential for reality,
right?
And within that, like there's all sorts of crazy stuff, and if you can channel that into like a creative endeavor, then that's probably going to be really good for your mental health.
Yeah.
But I think some people, they go into that creative part of their mind, and if they don't have someone to channel it, it can actually produce like this insanity. You see that with a lot of even the people who are producing the top creative stuff, like they wind up going kind of crazy, and they go in and out of emotional ups and downs. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all of our superpowers have it's a double-edged sword.
Totally. And that's why it's important to learn how to utilize them. And I think something that is a foundation of utilizing these superpowers is being able to understand ourselves, understand our body, our mind, and everything else that we can about how we operate and why we do the things that we do. So I want to dive into a little bit more before we wrap up here. Just the Qigong. Any kind of techniques or things that you would recommend our audience starts taking action on, or I know you're probably going to share some resources how they can continue the journey with you after this, but just give us an overview of what we can start doing today so that we can start making progress towards that mastery of ourselves, mastery of our breath, our energy, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So the big thing, so Qigong, it usually involves a lot of movement and stuff, but there's really simple things that you can do to help your Qi, and the one is the concept of yin and yang. So you kind of want to, so yin is sort of your passive energy, your relaxed energy, your yang is your active, go out and conquer the world energy, and you really want to, and actually most people think like they just need more yang, right?
Just need to do more.
Yeah, do more. But actually, in order to feed the yang, you need the yin. So in Chinese medicine, which is where Qigong comes from, they look at yin like the wax of a candle. The yang is like the flame, right? So the yang kind of liberates that potential energy into like manifest energy. And so you actually need to be able to nourish your yin in order to sustain your yang. You can burn your yang on overdrive for a while, but most people find they get adrenal fatigue or something like that. So actually being able to, even just a little bit of time, like once a day or as a little break, nourishing your yin, a really simple way to do that in Qigong is just to bring your hands over your lower abdomen. So you kind of just fold your hands like this. You can't really see my belly, but you bring them just over your lower abdomen, about level with your navel. And you can do it sitting, standing, lying, whatever. And it's called the original breath, and that's because if you watch the way babies breathe, it's actually their lower abdomen mostly moving with the breath. Like they haven't they have these big organs, they're big internal organs, and their bodies and their ribs haven't really like grown big enough to contain them. So they have these big bellies, and when they breathe, their bellies do this big expansion and relaxation. So we call it the original breath. It's the way we originally breathe. So you bring the hands over the belly, and as you breathe, you're usually in through the nose. If you're feeling particularly stressed or anxiety or anything like that, you can breathe out through the mouth as sort of a releasing. Just use a gentle sigh. If you're more focused on replenishing your energy levels, taking in energy, you breathe in and out both through the nose. But as you breathe, you want to bring your mind inside and just sort of start to feel the movement of the lower abdomen as you breathe. Actually, as you inhale, your diaphragm, which is sort of just below your ribs, is pulling down to open your lungs, and that's squeezing and compressing on your organs of the belly. So they have to kind of get out of the way, and they do that by moving outwards and downwards. When you exhale, the diaphragm lifts back up, create some space for the belly to come back in. You just kind of want to feel inside for that process. What this does is it returns your mind to your center, called the lower abdomen, the dantian, which means elixir field. This is where they say the chi stores itself. This is like your battery for your vital energy. If you like to visualize, you can imagine like a golden sun, like a ball of golden light, nice and warm in the lower abdomen. And every time you breathe in, that ball grows brighter, charges up with energy. As you exhale, that ball condenses a bit. It becomes denser. As you inhale, it's like you breathe more golden light into that ball. And as you exhale, that golden light condenses into that ball.
Mm.
About it. Just deep breathing, ball of golden light in your small intestine. It was a nice, easy one you can do. Wow. You can do it for like a minute.
It felt good. It felt so calming, so peaceful. Just so, like you said, that centeredness to recharge. That's beautiful, man. Yeah,
that's literally your center of gravity. For men, it's a little bit above the navel. For women, it's a little bit below. But what's interesting is, so in Chinese medicine, there's 3 dantians, 3 of these elixir fields. One, the lower one in the belly, second one's around the heart, third one's in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about this 4,000 years ago. And in Western medicine, we pretty much just figured out a few years ago that those are the most nerves in the body are in these 3 places: your brain, your heart, and your small intestine.
Yeah.
And sometimes they call this the gut brain in your belly.
Yes.
You can actually, like, digest information there.
Yes.
It's really cool. So they say, like, if you start to bring your awareness and your energy there, you can actually, instead of like stressing and overthinking things, you can kind of digest information and let your mind up here be a little more calm and still, and use this kind of gut instincts to maneuver your way through life a little more effortlessly.
I'm curious, I wonder if that relates to like how people used to think that our brain emitted the most frequency, the most amplitude of frequency the farthest, but then we found out that our heart does like farther. And do you know if our gut emits that like frequency?
I've never heard of it. I'm sure it emits something, but
yeah,
I've never heard of that. Huh. The heart one's interesting. Actually, they did experiments at HeartMath. Doing this. Yeah. Where they'd put people in like different rooms with like steel walls between them, and they were testing their heart rate variability. And what they were finding was like one person's field could interact with another person's field, and actually in their heart rate variability would influence each other. So they're trying to figure out like what does it take to stop that from happening, and they're going like certain distances and putting like barriers that should bounce back those waves or whatever, and still people's hearts are connecting to each other.
That's incredible.
Like, man, they gave me antipsychotics when I tried to tell them that.
I love it, man. I love it. This is hilarious. Well, dude, Nick, this has been super valuable and tons of great information, great discussion, and I loved hearing about your journey, and I know my audience did too. So how can they take the next step with you, and what's the way they can connect with you? What do we want them to do next?
Yeah, easiest way is my YouTube channel. I got lots of different really short Qigong videos for really specific things. Okay. Like Qigong for neck pain, Qigong for chronic fatigue, Qigong for depression, for weight loss, things like that. And then I have a couple longer videos. My favorite one is Qigong for beginners. It's like a half-hour routine. It's really comprehensive, gets you feeling the energy, gets you more energy, less stress is kind of the basic goal of Qigong. So
cool.
And any of those videos will be nice to use, and you can subscribe and all that. Also check out my website, bionicqigong.com. I got maybe by the time the audio of this podcast comes out, should have a little five element Qigong course up there.
Yes, man. Yes. keep me posted on that. Give me the information for that. And dude, Nick, keep up the amazing work. I love the Bionic Qigong. I love what you're doing with this brand and what you're all about. And this is just the beginning, man. So I'm super excited to see you also become the Professor Xavier of people with gifts and abilities and superpowers, man. It's awesome. And I just really acknowledge you for doing whatever it takes to persevere through challenges, through opposition, through rejection, through shame, through guilt, through everything that was thrown at you, to make you feel like there was something wrong with you, like you weren't human, and you just recognize that, hey, I have gifts, and I'm committed to discovering what they are. I'm committed to releasing that which doesn't serve me and stepping more into my power. So I acknowledge you for the journey that you've gone through, man.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So everyone, definitely stay connected with Nick. Go look at his YouTube and make sure that he keeps going forward and becomes Professor Xavier. Nick, have the best day ever, man. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, take care.